post-apocalyptic sci-fi horror thriller Bird Box. The film is based on the 2014 novel by Josh Malerman. We're introduced to the character Mallory, who is talking to two young children known only as boy and girl. She tells them that they're going to take a dangerous trip on the water and stresses that they keep their blindfolds on when they venture outside. There is a box with birds that Mallory picks up and takes with them. She uses a string to guide her and the children to a nearby boat, and they climb in. Flashback to 5 years ago. Mallory, who is pregnant, is visited by her sister, Jessica. The two siblings watch a news report about suicides that are sweeping the European continent. The unexplained deaths originally started in Siberia. Jessica looks at Mallory's painting and Mallory comments that it represents a loss of connection. Jessica says that when her baby is born, this won't happen. The two then go to a doctor. While at the doctor, Mallory jokes about drinking while pregnant. The doctor, finding no humor in her offhand comment, says that if she's not ready to be a mother, then she can look at giving the baby up for adoption. As both siblings leave, they see a disturbing image. A woman that they had seen earlier is now acting crazy, smashing her head against a window. Both siblings come to the realization that the events unfolding in Europe have now crossed the Atlantic. Pandemonium ensues, with cars crashing around them, so the sisters get into a car and flee. As they are driving away, Jessica's eyes turn a different color, and she starts seeing things that aren't there. Visibly scared, Jessica starts to drive erratically, and she crashes the car, flipping it on the road. Both sisters climb out of the wreckage, but Jessica is still fixated on something. Mallory is helpless as she watches her sister step in front of a truck and die instantly. Mallory is shaken, and her world is quickly falling apart around her. She escapes with a crowd of people, and as she's running, is knocked down. A woman named Lydia steps out of her house to give Mallory a helping hand. But as this happens, Linda becomes hypnotized the same way as Jessica. Lydia walks into a burning car which explodes as her husband Douglas looks in disbelief. Mallory is helped to her feet by a man called Tom, and together they run into the house. A police officer, Lucy, follows them inside. There are a host of other characters holed up inside the house, unsure and terrified of the events unfolding outside. The characters inside the house share their stories and experiences of the horrors they have seen. A man named Charlie thinks that this mysterious force is some sort of demon or creature which is able to manifest your deepest grief or loss. The group agree that this demon is invisible and will cause someone to commit suicide, so they cover up the windows to prevent anyone from looking outside. Fast forward to the present day, and it's nighttime. Mallory and the two children have spent the last 6 hours on the river. Mallory tries to contact people over the radio, but hears only the whispers of her name spoken by the creature. We jump back to the past, and a character called Olympia demands to be let into the house. Douglas is weary and says no. Mallory picks up the rifle as a precaution, and along with some of the other characters inside the house, they let her in. They see that Olympia is also with child. Greg offers to help by monitoring what's happening outside via the transmitters in the house. As he's watching the computer for any activity, he sees something. The rest of the characters hear a loud sound coming from the room Greg is occupying, and they witness him commit suicide. They promptly destroy the computer monitors. Back to the present day, and Mallory has now spent 14 hours on the river. She hears a voice calling her, saying that it's okay to remove the blindfolds, but Mallory is cautious and tells the two children not to. The voice was coming from a man who claims that he has food and shelter, and that the creature hasn't been seen. Mallory fires a shot into the air, causing the man to attack and try to remove her blindfold. But before he can do so, she kills him with a machete. The film again cuts to the past, where the group in the house begin to run out of food. Mallory, Lucy, Douglas, Tom, and Charlie head out to a local supermarket to look for provisions. They paint over the car windows and use GPS to guide them to the supermarket's location. They drive over what could be mistaken for speed bumps, but are actually the stricken bodies of those who didn't survive. The GPS senses that there is something near them, the creature. After some tense moments, they manage to navigate away from it and arrive at the supermarket. They stock up on food and other necessities, and Mallory finds some birds which she takes as pets. The group hears a voice coming from the locked freezer. It's the voice of one of Charlie's old co-workers, Fish Fingers. He rambles about how beautiful the creature is and demands to be freed. Fish Fingers tries to break out, but the group try to hold him at bay. Charlie then sees the creature and, knowing that his fate has been sealed, charges towards the freezer door and gets locked inside with his old friend. The rest of the group escape and return to the house. During the night, the group hears what sounds like the car being driven away. They investigate the garage to find that the car has been stolen. Back to the present day, and Mallory has now spent a full day on the river. As she's rowing, she hits a submerged truck and Boy falls overboard. She rescues him but loses the food and the blankets. Knowing that they need food, she docks the boat and heads into the woods, leaving the two children behind. She finds a building where she hears a noise and enters. She sees the invisible creature moving things within the building and manages to sneak away, hearing her name being called. She fires off her rifle at the invisible presence, prompting Girl to leave the boat. Mallory manages to find the girl and they both return to the boat. We return to the past again. Tom and Mallory talk about their lives and begin to develop feelings for each other. A man called Gary, who is trying to survive, is led into the house by Olympia. Gary spins a story of how he got to this moment, saying that there are people who willingly want to see the creature. Douglas doesn't believe what Gary is saying and points a gun at him, trying to force him to leave. A woman named Cheryl knocks Douglas out and they lock him in the garage. An emotional Olympia feels responsible for the altercation, and she confides in Mallory that if anything were to happen to her baby, then Mallory should take care of it. Mallory then gives her a Hello Kitty toy for the baby. Flash forward and Girl is holding the Hello Kitty toy. She is Olympia's child. They approach some rapids in the boat, and Mallory realizes that someone will need to take off their blindfold to navigate this dangerous section of the river. She then decides that the risk isn't worth dying, so they keep their blindfolds on. We return to the past, and both Mallory and Olympia are going into labor. Gary, who has seen one of the creatures, takes out some drawings of the creature, wanting others to see it. He rips the papers off the windows and even puts the pet birds into the freezer. The birds seem to sense the presence of the creature. Douglas witnesses what Gary is doing, so Gary enters the garage to silence Douglas once and for all. While this is happening, both women give birth. Mallory has a boy, while Olympia has a girl. Gary enters the room and pulls up the blinds, and then Olympia hands Mallory her child before jumping out of the window and falling to her death. Cheryl is the next victim, with Gary making her open her eyes, and she kills herself with a pair of scissors. With rifle in hand and eyes closed, Douglas comes to the rescue but doesn't fire in case he hits the babies or Mallory. He lets off a shot and hits Gary's arm, but his brief moment of heroism is short-lived as Gary uses the scissors to stab Douglas. Tom and Gary both see the rifle and try to grab it, and then gunshots are heard. Tom emerges with Mallory and the two babies. The film takes us back 5 years earlier, where Mallory and Tom are raising the two children together. Tom criticizes Mallory for not connecting to the babies by not giving them names. Mallory sets up her security system outside after they witness people driving around without blindfolds. During the night, the radio crackles into life. It's a transmission from a man called Rick. He says that he's at a secure compound with food and other supplies. Rick tells them how to reach the compound and that the journey will be difficult. He says for them to follow the river and the sounds of the birds. Tom and Mallory have different opinions about the radio message. Tom is hopeful, while Mallory thinks that it could be a trap. Their conversation is short-lived, as a group called Whistling Marauders show up outside the house and tell Tom to remove his blindfold. The group sees Mallory and the children, and in a desperate act to protect them, Tom shoots 3 of the gang members before being shot himself. Tom, knowing that his end is near, takes off the blindfold and proceeds to kill the rest of the gang members, then goes after the leader. The creature tries to take hold of Tom, but by sheer will he manages to fend it off and kill the group's leader. He then succumbs to the creature as he turns the gun on himself. Knowing that their present location is compromised, Mallory gathers the children to take the arduous journey down the river to the compound. The film takes us back to the present, and the boat is nearly at the rapids. The waters are violent and tumultuous, capsizing the boat despite Mallory's best efforts to navigate the tricky waters. Luckily, everyone survives, they make it to land, and they reunite. Girl's location was given away due to a bell she wears. They traverse through the woods, the creature whispering to them as they go. Mallory tells the children to concentrate on her voice and the sounds of the birds and ignore the whispering of the creature. They make it to the compound, and before they can enter, the creature surrounds them. Someone opens the door to the compound and they rush inside. Precautions are taken by the inhabitants, and Mallory is checked for any signs that she has been infected by the creature. Rick introduces himself and reveals that the compound is a school for the blind. Mallory sees the same doctor from the beginning of the film, and he asks her the children's names. She says that the girl is called Olympia and the boy is called Tom. Mallory then opens her bird box and frees the birds to be with their own kind.